to But Are There Dragons, a podcast where two friends pick a book at least one of them has not read and work their way through it a few chapters at a time.
I'm your host, Kritter.
And I'm your host, Jess.
And we're continuing this adventure with The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, with me as the resident Lord of the Rings veteran.
And me as a Lord of the Rings first-timer.
In this, our 9th and last regular season episode of Season 2, we're going to discuss Book 2, Chapters 8 through 10. Before we dive in, Jessica, what's new with you? How are you feeling?
Things are good. We are on our way to the end of Book 1, and I feel like that's really a big deal.
It does feel like a big deal. And even though this was technically supposed to be all one gigantic book, it does feel like somewhat of an end, you know, it's kind of, I don't know, my heart is like, I don't want to say it hurts, but it just feels weird. I guess we're like 1/3 of the way through, or if you don't include the Hobbit at least. Sure. It's a big day. Did you think we'd make it here?
I did. I feel like you and I are pretty determined individuals. Like once we put our heads to it, I knew we could get through it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And and with that being said, let's move to Book 2, Chapter 8, Farewell to Lorien. So we left off last week in Lothlorien. Celeborn confirms that with the party that they're all continuing onward, which they are, but there seems to be some confusion about where they're going next. This confused me because I thought they agreed Frodo was taking the ring to Mordor. Was this weird for you?
It was. So I was already confused because I thought Aragorn had left. And then Celeborn, I thought Aragorn was gone.
Oh,
yep. Okay. I'm a winner. But anyways, and then also
why? Sorry, I'm not
confused. Brings up because he walked away. He left while they was still with Haldir to go and see other people, and I thought that was him leaving.
Oh,
I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying I'm smart. I'm just saying it happened.
Okay, sorry, I interrupted. Please continue.
It's all good. So I was already a little taken back, and then Celeborn talking about, well, where are you guys going? Again, I was already, when we were at Council of Elrond, with the whole idea that people were talking about splitting up at certain points, but I don't know that I knew the actual plan. So I think that I was just a little taken off guard.
Okay, so but I guess the fact that you didn't know the plan, see, I thought the plan was set in stone. You guys can do whatever you want. Boromir's going to go back to Minas Tirith, but Frodo, at least, is taking the ring to Mordor. I thought that was set in stone. And now they're like, what are we going to do? I don't know. It's such a mystery. Gandalf's not here to make decisions for us. So that was just, I had forgotten that they were so indecisive in that regard. So yeah, it caught me off guard too.
I did think it was interesting that they painted it as almost like an idyllic repose, that they would go to Minas Tirith and have a brief respite. And then even later on in Frodo's mind, he's saying there's no reason to go to Minas Tirith. The fires of Mount Doom are not there.
Right.
So I agree with you that it was a bit confusing.
Yeah. Okay, so this little section is a bit of a doozy. I've got a whole paragraph written out, but we're going to talk about all of it once I'm done with the paragraph. So, the party receives many supplies and gifts from the elves. Boats, cloaks woven by Galadriel and her ladies, lembas, which is apparently better than Beorn's honey cakes, which is high praise, rope, to Sam's delight and relief, a parting feast, a gorgeous sheath for Aragorn and his sword, along with a green gem on a silver brooch in the shape of an eagle from Arwen, who is actually Galadriel's granddaughter. Boromir, Merry, and Pippin get belts. To Legolas, a bow and quiver. To Sam, a box with earth from Galadriel's garden. To Gimli, 3 strands of Galadriel's hair, despite him only asking for 1 after Galadriel commanded him to ask for something. And to Frodo, a phial with water from Galadriel's fountain with light from Earendil's star trapped within it, to be a light in dark places when all other lights go out. So that was a lot. Let's talk about the gifts. Any standouts for you?
Well, I'm going to go with the thing that is not gift related. There are honey cakes, and of course they're made by the Bjornings. I thought that was the most precious thing ever. I also like the fact that they pointed out that the lembas was more tasty than cram.
Yes, they brought up cram.
Yep. And so I just thought, and I'm part Hobbit myself at this point, but those were the first few things that kind of stood out to me. Not to take away from the details on the gifts, I feel like the gifts were very well represented in the movie, so none of those were very surprising. Although there was obviously more detail here. I thought that, finding out that the cloaks were woven by Galadriel and her ladies, and they've never been gifted outside of the elves, fascinating. They do kind of describe them almost like color shifting cloaks, which, puts me in mind of another intellectual property.
The Wheel of Time, if anyone was wondering. Yes, I had the same. I was going to ask you about that, but then I was like, you know what? I'm already talking enough when I list all these gifts, so I'm not going to bring that part up. But yes, Warder color shifting clocks. That's exactly how they sounded to me.
Yes, this is exactly what I thought of as well. So I was like, that's probably one of the closest, one of the most immediate, like that is almost a 1-to-1 for a Watt reference in my brain. The fact that Gimli's gift was probably the most fun for me. Because I honestly, to me at least, it read as though he didn't do it by guile. He wasn't trying to ingratiate himself. He was just saying, how could I ask for anything? And in his own way, kind of outsmarted it and still got a gift. Only asked for a single strand, and that he was going to encase it in gold as something, to memorialize the pact between the woods and the stone, meaning the elves and the dwarves. And just everything about that Gimli Galadriel exchange was precious. I just loved it.
Galadriel being like, I thought dwarves were known for their stoneworking, not their silver tongues or whatever. I mean, it's like she was complimenting him on how flowery his verse was. And yeah, I thought that was so nice. And honestly, I agree that the movies really do it justice, but I'm not going to spoil this for you, but this has more significance, and you kind of sense it with when the elves all gasp when he asks for it. Do you I don't know if you remember that happened. There's a reason for that, and I can't wait for you to find out why, and it's going to be a while. But the strands of Galadriel's hair are important, or like they're symbolic in some ways, and so this particular scene is like such an awesome call out to another piece of lore from Tolkien. And I just, it's a beautiful read. And honestly, you would think that like the light from Earendil's star is like the cool one, but honestly, the hair always stands out to me. I think it's such a cool gift. And honestly, I feel like Boromir, Merry, and Pippin kind of got shafted. You guys get belts. Congratulations. Have fun with the belts. Belts.
And even the sheath that she gave Aragorn, I was like, that's I kind of thought of you, right? Because it put me in mind of D&D. Any sword that uses this sheath will never break, will never tarnish, and I got a lot of D&D vibes from that. But it was a very cool gift in its own right. I agree. Merry, Pippin, and Boromir were kind of meh. And then the last piece was like the comments that Galadriel made with each of these. Again, there were quite a few highlights that I did where I'm like, this language was in the movies, this language is in the movies. Loved it. The 2 other standouts that I had was the blessing that Gimli got along with the hair. So not just that he got the hair, but that if hope doesn't fail, he's basically rich for life with never a concern for dragon sickness. That's what I read.
That's pretty amazing.
How I took that whole thing. Like, if hope doesn't fail, then you will be blessed and you will have gold and it will never negatively impact you. And I just was like, wow, that's quite the boon.
That's awesome. Yeah.
You know,
it's
and the green stone for Aragorn really stuck out. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right, because he wanted the green stone added into the poem about, oh my gosh, about Elrond's dad. I can't remember his name now.
Elendil?
Oh, Yarendil. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's literally right here. In the tale about him, he wanted that stone in there, and I found that really interesting. That like, oh, here we are. We've got the stone now. It's a real thing. And Arwen was just like for the longest time, I guess, staying in Lothlorien before she came back to Rivendell. So it was clearly just something that he was aware of. But
yeah. So the revelation about Aragorn having now a third name, Elisar, didn't know that.
Oh yes.
And then that Arwen is related to Galadriel. So in my notes, I'm pretty rude in my notes. I'm like, so is Galadriel his G-ma-in-law?
Yeah. Yes,
yeah.
Actually.
that is crazy.
Isn't that funny? Elves make everything weird, man. Like it's pretty bizarre. Because when you think about it, well, never mind. Well, you kind of know this.
Because it's Celebrian is Arwen's mother, right? Elrond's wife that passed away. Okay, because I was like, Galadriel's not related to Elrond.
No. This is Kritter with a quick PSA that Galadriel is in fact related to Elrond in multiple ways, albeit distant ones. Elves, am I right? Those ways, though, do not come up in the Fellowship of the Ring and will therefore not be discussed in this episode. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk and enjoy the rest of the episode. But Aragorn is kind of...
Yes.
Just a little bit.
Because of and I only know that from... I shouldn't know that, but I believe that it goes back to, like, Numenorian days.
Yeah, it's a way back.
It's way
situation.
back.
So it's not weird. It's not weird.
It's so long ago, it don't matter. So yeah, just those are the things. And also, those are the big standout things. And that they did a parting feast on the, what is it called? Egladale. They did a little picnic.
That was they're like, we haven't dined with you yet, so let's dine together before you leave. It was lovely. We haven't really talked about Sam's gift though, which I thought was so fun. It's so fitting for him, the gardener.
Yes,
G for gardener, Galadriel, and Gamgee. Like, I don't think she mentioned that, but
she didn't. But that's brilliant.
Yeah. I was just like, that's nice. To forget his last name, Galadriel, but. I love the idea of, sprinkle this in your garden, and you'll have the flyest garden in all the land. For Sam, that's the perfect gift, I think.
That really was terrific. You're right. I did kind of skate right by that. I was caught up in the in the lore stuff.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, like, he got a box of dirt. But then you think about it, you're like,
magic
he's the
dirt.
gardener. It's magic dirt. That's so nice for him. And also, like, he already got the awesome ropes. So that's another, like, boon for Sam, right? That wasn't specifically a Sam gift, but it's still very exciting for Sam.
I think I wrote something like, that sounds targeted. The fact that the specific mention of rope, and I was like, that feels like targeting. That feels a little targeted.
Look, rope. It's the best rope. Sam's like,
never
what?
quest without it.
Yeah. He's like, I knew that, but I forgot it the first time. I loved it. That was great. And then, so the light from Yarendale Star with Frodo, we know about the file. We know it comes up later. It's cool. It's a cool gift. We like it. Especially because, like, he just had that thing with the fountain and the looking glass and all of that. So it's got, like, a personal tie with him also, along with being a helpful nightlight. So, Yeah. A good set of gifts. We like the gifts, I think. 10 out of 10 with the
Highly
gifts.
recommend.
Yeah. Okay, so the party's time in Lorien ended with a bit of literary umami, in my opinion. They're sailing away because they got boats, and it goes. Lorien was slipping backward like a bright ship masted with enchanting trees sailing on to forgotten shores. Gimli and Legolas, teamed up in one of the boats and now friends, comfort each other after the loss of their time with the fair Galadriel as the boats sail south down the river. Any thoughts before we move on to the next chapter?
I also thought that was beautiful and had taken note of the fact that it said that Legolas and Gimli are now fast friends, which I found precious. But I had also taken note of the retreat of Galadriel and Celeborn. And I love the way that it was described and the way that it talks about how, like, they were pulling away from the land versus, you know, that the party was pulling away from them. So almost like the land was retreating from them. I just thought it was very neat the way that he described it. I thought it was very unique.
Yeah, she was like a beacon behind them of some kind. Yeah, that was really nice. I agree.
And then the last piece was to that fair land, Frodo never came again. And I just was like, that's so sad.
When they do that, it like hurts my heart a little bit.
It's really sad.
They did that with
narrator in this
last
book
time.
the narrator in this book is not as nice as the narrator in the last book. I'm gonna say that.
I agree. Not nearly as quippy. Basically, all the little inserts we get are like, oh, by the way, you should be sad about this. By the way, this super cool thing never happens again. Just like, ugh, why?
This
I
is
didn't need
awesome.
to know that.
And he'll never get to see it again.
Yeah. Like, gosh dang, man, that's brutal. Okay. Well, on that note, Book 2, Chapter 9, The Great River. The party passes an uncomfortable journey on the water, with everyone lost in their own thoughts, and Sam catching wind of their silent pursuer. Any thoughts about this opening little bit with Sam?
I saw a log with eyes. I mean, come on. That is so freaking cute.
I know. He's like, you're going to think I'm crazy. Frodo's like, I would think you're crazy, except I know you're not.
Yeah. I saw a log with eyes, and then I fell back to sleep. And now I'm just telling you, I saw a log with eyes. And by the way, Aragorn already knows about it.
Right.
You know, you find out later. Aragorn already knows.
And Frodo. He's like, they're just like operating with the knowledge of a little demon assassin following you. Didn't bother to tell you. So that's great.
I did think that this chapter, we come out of this chapter, chapter 8 again, feel like every time we pit stop in with the elves, we get some really idyllic scenes and a breath. And then we immediately go into, the Dark Lord hasn't been idle while we were in Lorien. And, Boromir's attitude has taken a turn all of a sudden. And then all of a sudden there's a great black winged creature. It does seem that if we are not going to stay with the elves, we should stop going to see them, because really terrible bad things happen after we leave the elves. Yeah.
Like, for example, Frodo's encounter with Gollum, now that they know that they need to keep watch over him, it was so creepy. And the fact that Gollum keeps evading Aragorn, a literal ranger who's trying to catch him, it's just kind of chilling, because how amazing he must be at river water travel and how dangerous that makes him, because they're on the water right now. I don't know. It's just like, I don't think I'd be able to sleep if I were them and knew about it.
They're very casual about being tracked by Gollum in a way that I absolutely would not be.
Yeah. Gollum just climbs up on the side of the boat and he's right there with Frodo. How do you just not freak out about that? I don't know. It's just creepy, creeptastic. And oh my gosh, there was another thing I forgot to mention, but Sam, he basically acknowledges how worthless he is on boats, and he calls himself no better than luggage. I thought that was so funny. This is like, what am I supposed to do? Like,
So
I'll watch.
it's a little harsh, but I do love a self-aware king. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
we all have different skills. And when you know that it's not your skill and not trying to sell it otherwise, I see you. You know, I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you are better than luggage. I promise.
Yeah. Luggage can't take first watch when
Right.
Gollum's chasing you. So
Right.
you know, it was a noble thing for him to volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they were trying to outrun Gollum and travel through the next nights, but then they run into some rapins and orcs, and as you said, a mysterious and dreadful flying creature that Legolas actually takes down. Did this encounter surprise you?
It did. I had no way to know. You know, first off, them being in boats for days and days on end. That none of this is anything like I've encountered before. This is all fresh content. Nice to see Legolas get a chance to use his new bow. Glad that it worked. Definitely.
Yes. Well done.
It did take me by surprise. Although the orcs trailing Gollum, not as surprising. Especially, I believe Aragorn makes a comment about it, about how Gollum would be like a pathway for the bad guys to find us, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that part was a little less surprising, and again, they're on the boat. They're on the boats for 10 days, like 10 days. It's a long time.
A long boat ride. It's a
really long boat ride, guys.
And the fact that the giant flying creature shows up this early, totally forgot about that completely. Didn't realize it.
And so I wrote down, because I was like, you know, great winged creature blacker than the pits of night, but this one in this reading also said it didn't act like a cloud. So earlier in this book there was a comment about a shadow crossing the sky, but it isn't going in the direction of clouds. And I was like, okay, so I feel like this is confirmation that was a black winged creature too.
Yep, they're being stalked by not just orcs, not just Gollum, big giant flying creatures that thankfully Legolas manages to take down occasionally, and notably Gimli was like, this guy can shoot. Like, I love how he gave Legolas his props. That was really cute.
I love that they're already besties. I genuinely love that. Yeah, so that was kind of crazy. I also thought that it was great. So I do love it when the characters give me context, because I lose track. So Aragorn mentioning that they're basically only about 60 leagues away from the southern part of the Shire, and them telling us that we're 10 days of travel. Those things help me genuinely, because I'm like just reading and I'm so passive and I'm just along for the ride. And I'm like, that's a lot of travel you guys have done over the course of this book to have only essentially gone 60 leagues.
Yeah, but don't say that, because I am doing Fantasy Hike, which is an app that you can download on your phone, and it keeps track of your distance. So like if you have an Apple Watch or something that like tracks your distance, it keeps track of your distance and compares you to Mr. Underhill, Frodo. And I have been desperately trying to catch up with him as he rests in Riverdale, and I am nowhere near. So granted, they are like traveling day and sometimes night, so it makes sense that they're way ahead of me. But don't say it's not very far, because it is, because I've been traveling for almost 2 months now and I'm nowhere near Mr. Underhill.
I would never criticize. They covered a lot of ground, and 60 leagues really isn't that short of a distance, but when you compare it to a whole book's worth of action.
Facts. Completely. I'm not disputing that at all. Whenever you look at the map, you're like, oh, okay, this could be farther. I get it. But then when
we're not
physically
measuring the centimeters on the world map,
right?
But still, it feels like they've gone a million miles. It feels like they've gone around the world and back again. For all the heartache that they've been through already.
Yeah, not yet though. Not yet.
Yeah.
Did you look like you were about to say something?
I have a couple other things. There were definitely a couple of words in this chapter I had to look up.
Ooh, I didn't flag any. What were they?
Okay, so there's one called Walds, Wolds, which is essentially a moor, like a raised moor.
Oh, okay.
And Eyot, Eyot, which is basically like a stone island. There was
Okay.
another one too, but I didn't find it when I went through my highlights. So they're just a couple words. So I'm just reading through and I'm like, so basically I just don't know geography. I don't know landmarks.
No, I didn't know those either. I didn't know those either. I just didn't look them up this time. Totally
I have
fine.
never heard of these things. So, you know, that's always humbling because, you know, I spend most every day thinking I'm pretty smart until, you know,
you read Tolkien and you're like, I could be smarter.
Yes.
Okay. So was that all for the moment? I can move on in the outline.
Can move on. Yes.
Okay. So Sam, actually, speaking of like distance and time, Sam questions how long they spent in Lothlorien because the moon phase is all messed up. So it turns out time absolutely flew by while they were there. Rich were the hours, though short they seemed. Did this convo about time and the passage of time and the elves carry any interest for you?
Absolutely, because I did spot it in the reading the first time Sam looked at the moon and made a funny face. And then, you know, the next paragraph or whatever. And later on in the conversation, it evolves that, you know, that wasn't the phase of the moon that we were in when we left. And so I was trying to, while they were talking, I'm like, are we thinking that time stopped or time sped up? Like, I want to know which way we're going.
Yeah.
And so we went with sped up, and I definitely, my ears perked up as it were. When Sam looked at the moon in a funny way, that caught me immediately.
I like how Tolkien has a version of time flies when you're having fun, and it's time flies when you're with the elves. The elves just throw a bunch of chaos into the mix, right? Like, right when you're done with them, bad stuff happens. While you're with them, time passes, and the dark one, the enemy makes moves. So yeah.
Well, and then again, you go back to that first quote for this chapter for me, which is the Dark Lord has not been idle while they were in Lorien, and he's had a full moon longer than we have.
Right. Now we know how much time that the gains that he's made while we were just chilling, looking at, you know, fountains and eating lembas. Although I guess they didn't get the lembas until the end, so not eating lembas. But it was
definitely unsettling, that realization.
I know. Every time, like, in fantasy, there's usually some sense of urgency, right? You know, Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings, whatever. There's some quest, some thing that they're trying to get to accomplish. And whenever time is wasted, or like you can't help but waste time, I get like anxious. You know, there's moments in some books where you have to spend time doing stuff that isn't moving towards the goal, and that time always just kind of freaks me out. Because it's just like, what if something bad happens in the meantime? And it almost always does. So, but I guess that keeps things exciting. So,
I mean, but that's real life too, right? Like, in the meantime, time is still passing outside in the real world.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. As a kid and sometimes as an adult, this is probably really personal, but I feel like if I have a lot of stuff to do, sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I have to take a shower right now, because it just feels like such a waste of time. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I do it. I do shower.
So many other things. Yes. For the record, listeners, we do shower.
We shower. I just sometimes wish I didn't have to, which is totally normal. I don't know.
You shoehorn a lot into your days, Chica. But with all the respect in the world, I could not keep pace with you.
Yeah, and also Mr. Kritter loves his showers, so I get that some people wouldn't want. They would want that moment for themselves. People are different.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes. You're like, that's 20 minutes. I could have done 2 tasks on my to-do list.
Yeah, and like, forget it if it's where I have to wash my hair shower. Is that
God.
That adds centuries onto the time that I have to spend. But nobody cares about that. We can move on. All right, so Boromir has really started to get on my nerves, constantly bugging them about going to Minas Tirith. One particular line of his made me fully roll my eyes. Quote, "To the tall isle I will go, but no further. Then I shall turn to my home alone if my help has not earned the reward of any companionship." So I was raised Catholic, and this felt like the Catholic guilt trip laid on so thick. I don't know. Are you similarly annoyed with Boromir at this point?
Yeah, so funny enough, I do have Don Marshall in the back of my head going, he's under so much pressure.
Yeah.
So first off, at the beginning of this chapter, Boromir's acting strange in the boats. He's biting his nails. He's talking to himself. He seems off already.
Got a glint in his eye.
He's got a glint in his eye. And then when he starts talking about that, yes, that is, and I'm slightly oppositional in nature anyway. So even if I want to do a thing, if you tell me to do the thing, I'm probably not going to do the thing. This is the kind of thing that will send me 180. Reverse psychology will work on me pretty much always, because I dislike everything about this approach. And I do think it does have to do with a little bit of my religious background.
Yeah, no, I feel you, man. I feel you.
So I did not like that. But at the same time, I do, I remember what Don was saying about the incredible amounts of pressure that are being placed on him. And also throwing back to what was said at the beginning of the chapter about he's starting to act different. So the other part of my brain is going, the ring is starting to have an effect on him.
Yeah.
And it's making him not, it could possibly contribute to acting in this way, as opposed to just saying, I'd still appreciate any aid Gondor can get.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah. I'm struggling to be like, it's the ring. It's not Boromir. It's the ring. But it's kind of like, we always, apologies to somebody who's listening who hasn't read The Wheel of Time, but I will explain this reference that I'm making. Boromir being influenced by the ring reminds me so much of something that happens in book 1 of The Wheel of Time and in the show, so it's not like a giant spoiler. But one of the characters, Matt, finds a cursed dagger, and he starts becoming a little turd Ferguson. And so that is like what is happening. Like, I love Matt most of the time, but during that sequence, I'm like, you are the worst. And so this is my Matt moment where I'm just having a hard time being like, I know it's the ring or I know it's the dagger, but I still hate you right now. So anyways, yeah, I was struggling with Boromir a lot in these few chapters.
So there was that part, and then him challenging Aragorn. So he made a comment, I'm paraphrasing because my Kindle is charging, so I don't have it in front of me. But he makes a comment about, I have said that we should go to Minas Tirith, but I am not the leader of this group. And I'm not the leader.
I got the ick. If nothing
I would send him to timeout. I would be like, you need a minute. You are having big feelings, and I'm gonna need you to take a timeout. I'm not the leader.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel so bad because I know it's
I don't know why I'm so triggered by a fictional character, but I am. Okay, so
am I, and I think it's part of it is that like that Catholic guilt. I'm over here like, you were trying to guilt trip me, and I hate that. So yeah,
it's real bad.
Doing my best not to hate him. Okay. So let us know in the comments how you're doing not hating Boromir at the moment. If you're doing as well as we are. Or
if we need to start a support group.
Like people who need to be more empathetic about Boromir's plight. That could be a great support group.
Boromir coping skills.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the party sails through the Sentinels of Numenor, great statues of Isildur and Anarion, and Strider goes full Aragorn, son of Arathorn, Elisar, the Elfstone, heir of Elendil. Did this hit you in any type of way?
It did, when he said he wished Gandalf was there to see it. So even though there was no real action, it's not like it was, I think the reading even made a comment about a king returning home. Foreshadow much. you know, them crossing the threshold of the Sentinels and his immediate wish that Gandalf could be there to see it, that was so relatable to me, to, you know, have somebody who understands your travels to date and how you wish that they could be there for such a momentous occasion.
Yeah.
And so I was already kind of in mind of it, you know, like, hey, that's my dad. And oh, I wish my magic dad were here.
Granddaddy Isildur versus, yeah, Granddaddy Gandalf. It was a little sad. I felt really bad because he definitely, like, crossing that threshold, you could see how torn he was, because he's like, here I am. Like, I thought this was going to be the thing I was going to do, but now that Gandalf's not here, you know, do I take the ring? Do I help Frodo? Like, what do I do? Right? Like, we're reaching a crossroads and I'm going to have to make a decision. In my brain, again, after the Council of Elrond and everything, and just, I guess, maybe having book knowledge, I'm like, the ring has got to be the priority, right? Ring is priority number one. Yeah. Like, okay, so it's not just me that's like, this decision seems easy.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess the next chapter kind of displays this also, but like Sam was the same way. He's like, why are we even talking about Minas Tirith? Like, that means nothing.
And I mean, I do remember them talking about Legolas and Gimli pairing off and going towards like where Dane and where Gimli's other dwarf relatives would be.
Yeah.
That general direction. And I do remember some discussion about Aragorn and Boromir potentially going to Minas Tirith. I didn't walk away from it thinking like those are side quests. You know, the main quest is the ring. The ring has to wind up in the fire.
Yeah. No, and I do like after the Council of Elrond, the plan was, you know, because I was surprised by this, that Aragorn was going to go with Boromir to Minas Tirith, but that was again when Frodo had Gandalf, and Gandalf is gone. Now Aragorn is the leader of the Fellowship of the Ring. The ring being the operative word, and still he's torn. But I guess obviously he's got like multiple allegiances. But it was tough for me to be like, how are you still trying to decide, man? It seems obvious, but it's fine. He was feeling a lot of feelings at that moment, and I guess that's totally understandable. So no hate there. So the chapter ends with a little exposition from our narrator. Wilderland was behind them. They could go no further without choice between the East Way and the West. The last stage of the quest was before them. How are you feeling at this point?
Again, I feel like it should all be about the ring. That's how I'm feeling in this moment. Like, there is really only one quest.
And that quest is the quest of the ring, man. Yeah, no, right there with you the whole time. Glad we're on the same page. Speaking of pages, book 2. I'm incredible at transitions.
What you did there.
Look at that transition. Book 2, chapter 10, The Breaking of the Fellowship. That is a daunting title. Yeah. So Aragorn stops the party at the feet of Amon Hen. Overnight, he's restless and confirms with Frodo using Sting that orcs are in the area, though not close by just yet. The next morning, Aragorn asks Frodo as the ring bearer to decide, Mordor or Minas Tirith? And Frodo asks for a minute. He needs a minute to think. So he separates himself from the party, but not for long, because Boromir follows him to try to convince him to bring the ring to Minas Tirith. While it may have started somewhat pleasant, it gets really intense. More intense than the movie, I would argue. Any standouts from this scene?
I think this scene kind of brought out... I can't wait to rewatch these movies, honestly. I can't wait to rewatch them. This scene brought out... I think there were parts of this that were captured in the movie that I didn't catch. Like, I just had gotten so used to the dialogue, I had kind of glazed over it. So the part where he says, again, terrible paraphrase, he says, well, thank you for telling me exactly how you feel. And Boromir takes that to mean, so then you'll come with us. And he's like, no. But I know exactly what I need to know. And so I'm like, I don't think that, wait, was that in there? I don't know. Was that in there? And so I agree that the way that it reads is incredible. It has a lot of menace to it because it does start so kind of innocent. And it definitely takes some turns and gets, precipitously darker and darker.
Right.
Yeah, no, I thought it was incredibly well done. And I just can't wait to see it again and compare.
Yeah, there was some parts of this that I guess I don't really know. I'm not going to get like deep about this, but I will say a trigger warning for sexual assault. But like this some of the stuff in this conversation kind of reminded me of that kind of a situation, right? He's like, why are you being so unfriendly? Right. And then you get the line, he goes from like super friendly with the gleam in his eye to totally unhinged. One of the last lines, you can lay the blame on me. You can say I was too strong and took it by force, for I am too strong for you, halfling. And suddenly he springs in front. It's like he like worked himself up to like trying to take what he thought was his, right? And so like there were just certain things about this that I was like, wow, like this was written so well that I could like see this type of situation in like a real life thing like happening. And I don't know, it was just it was really chilling. I thought it hit me way harder than it hits me in the movies, for sure, because I do feel like the corruption is more prevalent in the book. I think Boromir's like eagerness to help his people is definitely at the forefront in the movies, but this is like, no, he's under the influence, right? He's gone full evil at this point, not like under his control, but still, like, it's just, I don't know, chilling. It gave me the heebie-jeebies. Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like this is a perfect example. No. I feel like this is a perfect example of, like you just said, I have no doubt that Boromir thinks that he's doing this because he's trying to save his people, and this is a tool that he needs to save his people. I feel like this is a perfect kind of downward spiral, really scary downward spiral that shows exactly what Galadriel was speaking to, right? Like, I would have the best of intentions. Gandalf even hinted at it, right? Like, I would have the very best of intentions. But he essentially, over the course of a conversation, worked himself to a point where he would do physical harm to obtain that item.
Yeah.
That took place over the course of a conversation. He has not been in possession of the thing. He hasn't even seen the ring since
he did
the
ask
council.
to see it and then got annoyed when he was refused.
And so it's just, it's really, and I also wonder, so I did see the parts that you were talking about, and in terms of the violence piece that you're talking about, absolutely had the same red flags. I can't help but wonder, if that's also kind of a mechanism of where we're at in our lives as adults. I don't know that 17-year-old me would have gotten that.
I don't remember getting that at all. Yeah. But
yeah,
this time
I think that
was
it's
like,
I think that being a little bit older, having a bit more mileage and understanding just how horrible human beings can be, unfortunately, it lets you understand the full depth of that threat.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like Boromir being a full-grown warrior man and Frodo being this like little
Twice
halfling.
his size.
Yeah, it was just, there was a lot of elements to it that I was just like, wow, this has so many, well, one particular real world parallel that I cannot ignore here. But yeah, it was intense, basically. I don't know.
Yeah. And then, and then him all of a sudden coming to.
Yeah.
All of a sudden just coming to, and I'm so sorry, and I didn't mean it,
and too late, bro.
Yeah.
Too late. Sorry. So yeah, speaking of, Frodo escapes with the ring on and makes his way to the top of Amon-Hen, to the seat of seeing, where signs of war appeared all across the land. And eventually he feels the eye, capital E, and just manages to snap himself out of it, and take the ring off before the eye pinpoints his location.
Mhm.
Then he's resolved. He must take the ring to Mordor, away from the Fellowship, who it was obviously already affecting thanks to that encounter with Boromir. So is this a good choice, Jessica, going off on his own?
I kind of think yes, just because it showed him what he needed to do. I do want to talk about, there was a moment when he's on the chair and when he's seeing all of these things. And so it is called the Chair of Seeing. And I had a couple things happening for me. One is talking about how when he had talked to Galadriel about the ring being able to show him things. So this felt like a foray into that. He was seeing all kinds of things before he felt the pressure and the presence of the eye seeking him out. The other thing is that he had two powers in him, I think is how it was worded, the language in the story. And so that pointed to it, you know, the voice that wanted to keep the ring off, the voice that wanted to take the ring off. And this pointed to the duality of Gollum in my mind.
Yeah.
You know, and so those were moments that really kind of or the duality of Gollum as presented by Andy Serkis, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an inference, but also kind of neat that, you know, he had two impulses, and which one was the stronger? And thankfully the right impulse, the good impulse, won out. But that's kind of what that made me mindful of in that moment.
Yeah, there was one half of him that wanted to be like, I'm right here. I'll bring it to you. And then he was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
That's not me.
And not for the first time, right? Not the first time the ring has encouraged him to make shady choices.
Yeah. So good for him. Like, good for him to overcome that for sure. Frodo is he's doing some good work in this particular sequence of chapters, taking the lead in a lot of ways, and just being like his conversation with Boromir before it really spiraled out of control. He was very much like, no, I'm going to take your counsel. I see what I need to see here. You know what I mean? Like he was really taking it all in, and I don't know, seems like a really smart guy, basically. Even though the ring is always going to tempt people, just some people more than others, I guess. Okay, so the party starts wondering what's taking Frodo so long, and Sam reads him like a book. What good is Minas Tirith anyway? Like, he's obviously not deciding that. He's deciding something else. But then when Boromir gets back, Sam realizes Frodo's plan, being the one who knows him the best, and chases him down to the riverbank, where he almost drowns before Frodo saves him. Sam insists on accompanying him, to Frodo's ultimate delight, even though at first he's frustrated. And the two set off on what the narrator calls the last stage of the quest, to end the Fellowship of the Ring. So how much did this make you absolutely love Sam? Because for me, this
clinched it. This clinched it. Of course you are, and I'm coming with you. I mean, I can't. There aren't many moments in television, in media, that are more meaningful to me than that. And
yeah,
you know, this is the source material for that.
Yeah, you're going to Mordor, obviously, and so am I.
And I'm coming with you.
Yeah, like that's great. We're going together.
Yeah. No, I had the same exact track, you know, like, of course, Sam is the one who goes, no, that's not the question. You guys are not asking the right questions. That's not the question. This is the question.
Yeah.
So everything about that absolutely solidifies him as a top-notch ride or die.
Yeah, he is, you know, family. There's nothing more important than family. To quote the great Vin Diesel. Yeah, so the last stage, like the narrator said that a couple of times. I thought that was an interesting word choice, because even though this was supposed to be one big book, this is just 1/3 of a story. So how are we about to go into the last? What do they mean by last stage? Did you find that wording weird?
I did find that wording weird. Also, just pure distance wise, it's not 1/3, it's 1/4.
Right. So like, what do you mean last stage, narrator? What are you talking about?
I don't know, but I feel like they're being sketchy and not being 100% with us.
I guess the last stage could be like, well, the party was together, but now this is the stage where they're not. Maybe. I don't know. That's the only explanation I can think of.
Sure.
Okay, so how did you like this ending compared to the movie ending? Because it is quite different.
I think that it's good. Honestly, especially knowing, because I already did know that, Tolkien did not want to break this up.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is a decent natural breaking point where we see the fellowship break.
Yeah.
And the parties start splitting ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think I had mentioned to you earlier that there's just a little bit, the really big action pieces were a couple chapters ago, but we also experienced that with The Hobbit, right? That,
Mm-hmm.
We
How
don't
does the
immediately
dragon die with multiple chapters to go?
The dragon died and there's still 4 or 5 chapters left. How'd we get there?
Yeah.
So I think that this was a good breaking point based on what I know so far, right? Which is just book 1.
Yeah.
I don't know any better though, right?
Right. Yeah. I guess I do feel like the movies did the movie thing where they're like, okay, we need to beef up this end. We need to add some drama. We need to add some fight scenes. You know what I mean? So that felt the ending of the Fellowship movie is very Hollywood and fun and exciting and whatever. And the ending of the Fellowship of the Ring book is more like I don't want to say emotionally impactful because there's some things that happen in the movie that don't happen in the book that are very emotionally impactful. But it's got a different vibe. It's like the Sam and Frodo thing is so sweet and meaningful, and I love it. And that's a nice thing to end on, right? It's kind of like the denouement or whatever you want to call it, the thing that's like coming down from the climax.
The denouement.
Yeah, thanks. And then there's the Boromir thing, which to me is like, oh my god, this was a lot. Right? That was like the actual climax, I guess, if you have to put a climax towards the end. And so it was just like some big stuff happened. Fellowship breaks up, but it wasn't quite as like fireworksy, I guess, as the movies.
And I think that I liked it. So to your point, I liked this better than having it be combat driven. So again, the combat at the end, thinking about it now comparatively, the combat at the end of the movie, as I remember it from whenever my last watch was to this, it makes me very mindful of how Frodo left, right? Like everything's been under duress with people chasing him from the get-go. And that's not necessarily how everything has been staged in the book. Similarly here with the end of, book 2 is that the movie represented it as they're all under attack and they're all frantically just trying to get away. But this is more mindful and intentional, and I actually prefer that.
Yeah. Frodo made the decision. That was nothing. Nobody took that decision away from him. Yeah, it was good. It was really good. I love them both. Like the movies are my favorite movies of all time. So of course I love how the movie goes. I think the movie's I think the Fellowship of the Ring is a perfect movie, actually. But yeah, I just think sometimes books are like need or can totally be different and still be amazing. And I think that applies here. Of course, we'll be talking more about the book as a whole whenever we do our wrap party, but we're not there yet. So that is it for these chapters and the book. So any final thoughts about these chapters before we pick an MVP?
No, I'm good.
Feeling good. Okay. So we've got a tradition where we pick an MVP from the chapters we've read for each episode. Cue the music. Jessica, who would you name as your MVP this episode?
I'm going to go with Galadriel. She gave them some really good swag.
Okay, big fan of the swag.
She gave them some really killer stuff. And yeah, I'm going with Galadriel. Dang it.
Wow, that is not what I would have expected. So I'm over here torn a little bit between, for the first time, I think, Frodo and Sam. Like, I don't know that Frodo's gotten much love this book. I'm not the one keeping the spreadsheet, so I actually can't remember. But Frodo really impressed.
Are we doing it for the book or for the trilogy?
I don't know.
Are we doing MVP by book and MVP by trilogy?
If that's okay with you.
I mean, it's fine. It's fine. But she did give him some really cool stuff.
I believe you. I believe you. Wait, no, we're not doing MVP for the whole book. We're doing MVP for the chapter. What? Sorry. Let me understand. This is the MVP for these chapters. The spreadsheet, yes. In our rap party, I think we will announce
for the book.
But then we can continue,
yeah,
like on the journey, if that's okay.
Because I'm thinking about who's represented on the spreadsheet, and I think you're probably right. I don't think Frodo has gotten anywhere near the love that he deserves,
if any. I don't know if anybody's picked. If we did pick him, it was very early on because I really don't remember. But anyway, But I'm not going to let that sway me because my heart of hearts says it's got to be Sam. Because even though Frodo held his own against Boromir, made the right decision, I think, he did all the things he needed to do. But Sam was positively delightful and like the best friend you could ask for. And if Frodo managed to leave all by himself, he would have lost. Like he would have died. And so Sam saving him from that fate and reading him like a book and loving the rope thing that Galadriel gave them and getting the box of dirt and realizing that Gollum was following them with the eyes in the log, all of that stuff. Like he was just my favorite one to read about these 3 chapters personally. So okay. It's Sam for me once again. And I just want to give a shout out to Frodo because I know he doesn't get a ton of love.
He doesn't.
He will. Hopefully he will.
His time will come.
I'm hoping so. But for now, for me, it's Sam. Yeah. So anyways, wow, that's going to be it, I guess.
That's it.
Any thoughts before I send us out? Okay, so we'll be going live on YouTube on March 5th for our Season 2 Fellowship of the Ring wrap party, where we'll talk all things Fellowship. Of course, we will plan to put the audio recording onto the just audio only podcast platforms that we have. But if you want to watch us live, you want to get in on the chat, that'll be March 5th in the evening. And I will schedule it on the But Are There Dragons YouTube. So you'll be able to see exactly what time, but most likely it'll be 7:30 p.m. or 8 p.m. Central Time, because that's typically when we roll. So get excited for that. I know I'm excited. We'll go over things like book MVP, our overall thoughts about the book, how we like this book compared to The Hobbit. I think will be a fun conversation because season 1 was The Hobbit, and yeah, what we're looking forward to, I guess, in the books to come. So you don't want to miss it. Mark your calendars for March 5th. And finally, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 9 of season 2 of But Are There Dragons, brought to you by your hosts, Jessica Sadai and me, Kritter XD. Don't forget to follow us at But Are There Dragons on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, and But Dragons Pod, just 1 T, on X. You can also find your hosts on social media as CritterXD and Shelf Indulgence. That is it for today. We are still workshopping catchphrases for season 2, and maybe during our rap party, we can decide what our favorite one was if I can figure out how to do polls. So let us know on social media how you feel about this one. And I'm going to channel my inner Galadriel again, so don't laugh. Let your... I got to get in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Let your heart not be sad, though night must follow noon, and already our evening draweth nigh. It was okay, but thank you for listening. Have a good one.
Bye.